الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. My name is Sophia, I'm your host. The aim of Let the Quran Speak is to help you gain deeper insights into Muslims and Islam, as it is practiced here and in other parts of the world. In this episode, we'll be discussing a new study that links physical punishment of children with mental and personality disorders as well as drug and alcohol abuse. But before we get to that, we offer a primer on Ramadan. As you know, Ramadan has just begun, and Muslims observing this month may be wondering, what are the basics I should know? What breaks the fast? When does the fast begin and end? Are there other things besides fasting that I should do or avoid doing in keeping with the spirit of this month? With me to discuss Ramadan is Shabir Ali. He's the president of the Islamic Information Center in Toronto. Brother Shabir, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Pleasure to be on.
So we're in this blessed month. What is your advice for individuals, first of all?
Well, the days are long, the nights are short, and of course the fasting is observed during the day. One should try to have a healthy breakfast to start out. This is actually recommended, and in fact it is interesting that in the Islamic tradition, blessings are mentioned for eating the suhoor. Of course, people want to eat because that's what we do as human beings, but in the Islamic faith, there is such a holistic approach to things that even eating in general for the good intention of sustaining one's body and keeping one's good health is a blessing, and when one gets blessings for eating, this is the interesting part of it. In the month of Ramadan in particular, the breakfast is recommended, is referred to as suhoor, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, has announced that God blesses people who eat this morning meal.
So I guess one of the most common questions that we have during the month of Ramadan is, what breaks the fast? How do we determine what breaks the fast?
Basically, the fast involves abstention from eating, drinking, and sexual gratification. So this, if one does any of these three things, then the fast is broken. In terms of eating or drinking, obviously, non-Muslims watching the show may be wondering, well, I mean, at least you can eat some things, right? Because some fasts in other religions may involve the abstention from meats, for example, but you can still have
types of food,
or certain types of foods, but you can still have others. And sometimes there's a fast from eating solid food, but you can still drink. And what is surprising to many people is that the Muslim fast involves a total abstinence from all food and drink.
So is this the only religion that has this?
There may be others as well, but I haven't investigated the issue from that perspective. But it is still surprising that, and it is still a unique feature of the Islamic faith, that we have for so many days in a row a total absence from food and drink. Of course, one is allowed to eat at night, and this needs to be clarified. So basically, on a short day, let's say if the fast occurred during the winter months, which soon enough will occur again, then basically you're missing a meal in the middle. You have your breakfast and you have your dinner, but you're missing lunch. In the summer days, it's a little bit more challenging because not only is the weather hot and one needs to drink more often, but the days are long, and this means that you're missing not only the lunch, but you know, the morning and afternoon snacks in between. So it could be challenging, but
so some Muslims might experience anxiety before Ramadan, worrying, wondering how they'll survive during the day.
Yeah, of course. And now that we're here, I mean, now that we're here in the month, obviously, we're, you know, it's either a do or don't, and in you know, all the anxieties past, when one starts getting into it, the first couple of days is difficult. There's no denying that. But then about 3 days into the fast, one develops a sort of a routine. And somehow, like, the body becomes trained to know what to expect, and the body doesn't expect food at a certain time, and you're able to live with this. Now, if one has been doing it year after year, then it becomes easier still. still, because now it becomes kind of routine mentally. And of course, there's a mind-body connection. The more we have a determined will to accomplish this, the more one is, the anxiety is overcome and one's whole system is left at ease, knowing that this is the routine. I'm going to eat at a certain time and not before that.
What about somebody who just can't deal with the fast? It's too long, maybe it's too hot, maybe their work is too strenuous. What advice would you have for them? Yes,
basically, as the Quran prescribes, the fast is for those who are able to do it. The Quran in Surah 2, verse 183, says that you should fast, but if you, as for those who are not able to do it, or could do it but with great difficulty, the fidya, the compensation for this, is the feeding of a poor person. So instead of fasting, a person who is too old to fast, or one who has a chronic or a permanent sort of physical illness that makes the fast unbearable or too difficult, or something that will aggravate the illness further, or, as you mentioned, somebody who has such a difficult job that it will be really physically too demanding for the person to fast, then instead of fasting, one would feed a poor person for each day of the fast. In the case of a person who is otherwise healthy, but is just constrained by his physical work at the moment, one could make up the days by fasting on other days, like off days, or when one has a holiday or weekends or something like this. But if that too becomes too burdensome, then the possibility of giving the fidya, the charity for feeding a poor person, this is always open, and that too is a way of serving God. We should not think that service to God means really being totally tough on ourselves, because God doesn't get anything from our hunger and thirst. We get something. We develop a certain degree of willpower, physical and mental fortitude and determination. We purify our souls of all of the inclinations that normally drive us towards evil things. We become masters of our own destiny in this way. So we gain something from the fast. God doesn't gain anything from our hunger and thirst. So there's no sense of a person, really killing himself or herself, thinking that God is going to be happy with me in this way. No. In fact, God is going to be happy with us when we take good care of our bodies, we take care of our health, but at the same time, we are trying in using the options that are available before us to purify our souls. And most people, of course, neglect the souls, and we just simply care for the body. The month of Ramadan is a time when we refocus our directions and think about what is really ultimately important. The soul and the spirit of the human being needs its own nourishment and development, and that's what we try to do during the month of Ramadan.
I want to get back to that topic of the soul and the spirit in a moment, but what about somebody who takes medication? What can they do? Like, let's say they take, they're not sick, but they take regular medication at certain times of the day.
Yes, this is something that has not been, as far as I know, or as I feel, properly addressed in the classical books of Islamic jurisprudence. Because generally they have a kind of a clear-cut thing. Either you're fasting or you're not fasting, and there's nothing in between. So now let's think about the clear cases. Clear cases, if a person is so ill that the person, by fasting, one would just simply aggravate the illness, then that person should not fast. This is clear. Now, what is not clear is that there may be a person who can take some medication but otherwise not eat or drink and be otherwise fine. And that person normally gets by with all kinds of routines, and there's no harm in any way if the person would fast. Some Muslims in such a situation would feel like fasting. Now, we can say that they're not legally required according to the Islamic law, because that's been already set in classical Islamic works, and I don't want to revise it from that perspective. But from the perspective that the person really wants to fast, now the rule is saying also that you're not even allowed to fast. Your fast doesn't count for anything. To me, this is going too far with the legalities here. I think a person in that situation, if he's not going to harm himself or herself, then that person person, by taking the medication and only the medication and only that much water, which is required to swallow the medication if needed, should be taken, but otherwise not eating or drinking. To me, that person is still fasting for the sake of God, and his or her fast will still be accepted by God, but it would not be required of that person to fast, and that is the distinction that I would make.
Mm-hmm. We're running out of time. We have a lot more to discuss, but very quickly, what are some do's and don'ts that beyond what we've discussed that you might want to talk about with relation to Ramadan?
Well, we've talked a lot about the legalities here. We should talk about the spiritual aspect, because those are the formal aspects. Now, the spirit of the fast really requires avoiding all things that will displease God. So lying, cheating, backbiting, stealing, being unfaithful in any way in our dealings with other people and so on. All of this should be avoided. In a hadith, it is mentioned that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that whoever does not give up the false speech and false acting, God has no need for such a person to give up his food or drink.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for your time, Brother Shibir.
You're welcome.
We'll take a break. When we return, we look at discipline and punishment.